Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue. Let me just adjust the camera real quick. There we go. Today we're going to continue with the Firefly project that we're working on. And we're going to jump straight into Photoshop. We're going to be doing some tweaks and some post-production. It's going to be a little bit of a short video. It's not going to be 1 hour long. Don't worry about that. I just want to show you a couple of neat tricks and tips that we can use inside of Photoshop to make our image look even better. But before that, let me tell you that we have a very cool promotion this time around. We just released our Photoshop course, a Photoshop for Beginners course, and it's been doing really well. So if you're new to Photoshop, if you don't really know how the tools work and you want to learn all about the basic tools inside of Photoshop and how you can use those to enhance your images and all of your works, then this opportunity is for you. We're gonna do the same dynamic down here in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description of the video. You're gonna find a promo code to get a very nice discount for the course. So make sure to check it out. This is only gonna be valid for a few days. So make sure to check it out as soon as possible and get your hands on the new the new Photoshop course. Sorry, the new Photoshop course. So let's go, guys. This is where we left off, and this is the image that I saved as a JPEG from Maya. Now, I did one other thing, but unfortunately I won't be able to show it right now because I've already closed Maya, and that is I saved the image as an EXR. So EXRs are these very nice high dynamic range images that we can save our files into, and you're gonna get something like this. So you can see that here in the EXR, the image is actually lighter. We can see a little bit more. It's also desaturated. We're getting like a different result. There's still a couple of fireflies here and there. Like the noise is not super clean, but it's looking good. And this is what we had, right? Like this is what we were going for. And the EXR is what we're going to be using to get to this position. The reason why I like to work with EXRs is since they have more depth in the pixel values. They're a 32-bit pixel image. We're gonna be able to push things a little bit further or closer to what we're looking for. So the only downside to using EXRs is that a lot of the filters that we normally use, for instance here on the image adjustments, a lot of the adjustments that we normally use are not going to be available. But one of the most important ones, like hue and saturation and exposure, are going to be available. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to flatten the image into a 16-bit image, and then we're going to go from there. Okay. So another cool thing is, as you can see, we have the alpha here on the channels. So I'm just going to control click the alpha to select it, go into the layers. Let me duplicate this image. Just gonna duplicate that layer. This one we're gonna lock and hide so that we always have the original as a backup. And then on here, I'm just gonna create a mask. Therefore, we're gonna get this. So I won't be able to import an image just yet because, again, the image that you get from the internet are 8-bit and this is a 32-bit image. So the depth is gonna be different and we might get some artifacts. So I'm just gonna do it with like a black background for now. So let's just fill this with black again. Just call this BG background. And we're going to start adding some adjustment layers here. So I'm going to go down here. Let's start with a exposure one. So the exposure is going to be on top, of course. And if we double click here, we're going to get the properties on the exposure and we can play around. So as you can see, we can overexpose or underexpose our image. So if we start underexposing the image, you can see that we're getting a little bit closer to what we had before, but with nicer tones, which is also very cool. A lot of the 3D work actually gets done in post-production. Usually when we render, sometimes we render like very flat images like this, and then all the magic, all the like the effects and the colors and stuff, they get added or they get tweaked in the post-production phase. So I'm gonna decrease the exposure. Let's play with the offset. See, if we lower the offset, you can see that we're start getting these very dark images like what we had before. I don't think I want to do that though. The gamma correction, I think I'm gonna push the gamma a little bit higher, just so we get this like darker tones like that. There we go. Now let's play with a little bit of color balance. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna say curves, and what I'm gonna do, well, actually not curves, sorry. Do we have the color balance enabled is the question. No, we don't have the color balance, so we're gonna have to go with curves. I'm gonna go with curves, and something very basic that I like to do is I like to create an S-shaped curve. So I'm gonna click here in the middle, click down here near the blacks, and click right here near the whites. And if we push this guy down, you're gonna see that the blacks get a little bit darker, and if we push this one forward, you're gonna see that the lights get a little bit lighter. Now don't go crazy because you can see the image can very easily break, but if we just go a little bit higher, just a tad bit there, we're gonna be able to get some effect. Now the cool thing about this is all of these guys work with opacity, similar to what we have in Substance. So I'm able to tweak this very nicely here and get a nice effect. I'm gonna go back to the exposure. Whoa, cancel. I'm gonna go back to the exposure here. Let's expose it just a little bit more because I know that we're gonna lose a lot of the things once we start adding more details. And finally, we can play around with hue and saturation. So I'm just gonna saturate this thing just a little bit more, just a little bit, not that much, just almost nothing there. Lightness, I think we're fine. We can lower it just a little bit as well. And there we go. So as you can see, these three elements right here really change the way our image looks. I know that in the file it might be a little bit too dark. I'm gonna work with that later on. But this really changes the way the whole thing works. And again, we can just like modify this, say like only a 50% of the effect, and all of those three layers are only gonna be affecting a 30% of the effect, which is very, very good. Now we're gonna move from 32 bits all the way to 16 bits. So I'm gonna go image, mode, and I'm gonna select 16 bits right here. And what this is going to do is I don't want to merge anything, and this is going to just flatten the image. We're still going to keep everything, our background, everything is nice and clean. And now we're going to be able to access a lot of the other adjustment layers that we were not able to use at the 32-bit range. So let's go for a background image. So I'm going to go for like a forest at dusk. And let's look for an image that gets closer to what we're looking for. So something like this, of course, is what we're going for. That's like the fireflies, which is fine. I don't want to have as much information. So this one's perfect, I think. It even has the fireflies going on, so they're going to be blurred. Everything is going to be blurred. So I think this might work just fine. Even with the like, what's the word? I don't really care about the watermark. So I'm just going to Control C, and then with my M key, I'm just going to Control B and place this underneath our image. There we go. I'm just gonna expand this so we get this very like a bigger image right here. We need to make sure that the scale looks as nice as possible. Perspective looks good, I think. I think we're close to what we're going for. And of course, I'm gonna go filter, blur, and we're gonna Gaussian blur everything, like really, really heavily. Something like that. There we go. Now, here's where we need to think about how do we want to match things. Do we want to match our 3D to the image, or do we want to match the image to the 3D? There's two ways in which we can do it. I think it might be a good idea to try and match the image to the 3D first, and then work on the overall scene as a whole. So I'm going to press Control U on the image, and this is going to bring up the hue and saturation element. I'm going to desaturate the image because, as you can see, it's way too saturated for what we have. And I'm also going to bring the lightness like a little bit down to something like this. As you can see, that gets a little bit closer to the overall scene. And now we can start adding filters and layers on top of everything to make sure that the whole element is nicely, nicely displayed. One thing that I always like to do is I like to give a sharpen to our 3D. 3D tends to blur things out. You can see that everything is like very, very blurred. It's just like this filter that Maya adds. And pretty much every render engine does it. So I'm going to go here into filter, sharpen, and I'm going to say smart sharpen. And let's give it like, like 138%. That's fine. So you can see the change there from this. And then when we add the filter, we get this, a lot sharper, right? So the details are going to be a lot nicer, which is what we're going for. Now, all the way up here, I'm going to add a new color balance, and this is going to change the whole thing. Like this is what's really going to push the image into this cinematic look. So if we take a look at the reference images here, you can see that the images look very cool, very cold. So I really want to push the midtones to like this very blue, cold color like this. See that? So I'm just adding a little bit of cyan, a little bit of blues, maybe a little bit of like magentas. We can go to the shadows as well. And in this case, since the overall scene is very cold, I'm actually going to make the shadows a little bit warmer. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the highlights, and the highlights we're also going to make them cold. So we're creating this sort of contrast where from this element where everything is just like very flat, we're getting a little bit more crunch, a little bit more, let's just call it depth on the colors, right? So we get this very, very cool effect. Now we can also add, for instance, like a vignette effect. I think a vignette effect might be good for us. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to press B for the brush. I'm going to right click, and on the general brushes, I'm going to use this soft round pressure size. Let's go really high here, like really, really high on size. Let's grab like a dark color, and I'm just going to fill all the borders with this dark color. Change the options to something like an overlay. so that the colors are like multiplied, and then reduce this thing. Like probably like a 10% is good. It's just a little bit of a shadow on the borders that's gonna push our image into a nice effect. Now we can think about, okay, what else can we do on the image to make this thing look a little bit nicer, right? I do think it's still a little bit too dark, so I'm gonna go back to this group. Remember, I'm just gonna get rid of a little bit of that information so that the image is a little bit clearer. I know that this is no longer like a night scene, but I'd rather have a very nice effect here than to have extra elements there. So now I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna add a new layer, and I'm gonna select the color again with my brush. I'm gonna select the color of the light bulb, like this very like warm orange color, like here. And what I'm gonna do is with a very soft brush, like the one that I have right now, I'm gonna add the glow on the light bulbs, because right now we don't have any sort of like fog or anything, and I would like to add like this element right there. This one's gonna be a little bit smaller, so small. This one's a little bit bigger, so we go big. There we go. Now, of course, this one only looks like the color is painted on top of the effect, and that's not what we're going for. Here's where blending modes, which are one of the very cool things about Photoshop, come into play, because we can go here and change this to like a linear dodge, for instance, or like a lighter color, and we're going to be multiplying the effects or the elements. So for instance, this one right here, the hard light or the vivid light, both of them look very, very good. I'm trying to find which one is the best one. Usually linear dodge is the best one. And then I'm just gonna lower the opacity a little bit, and as you can see, we're gonna have a very nice faded glow there near the elements. Now, if you think that the image still looks a little bit too dark or something, you can always come back here and add another adjustment layer. In this case, I'm gonna use a levels, and we can push the colors here so that we get a different effect. So levels work in a very interesting way. These levels represent how your pixels on the image are distributed. So as you can see right now, most of our pixels are on the dark squares. So if we start moving this down here, everything is going to become lighter. See that? Because now we're kind of like pushing these guys into the whites. Now this is way too much, of course, so we need to find like a nice compromise. So something like this, for instance, where we see a nice illumination without actually getting rid of all of our dark colors. Now, if you do want to get rid of a little bit of the dark color, so for instance, right here, it's really, really dark, you can use this guys right down here, and these are gonna like clamp the blacks to a lighter tone like this. And again, all of these layers, what they do is they will create a, what's the word, a sort of blend, right? So we can always go here into the opacity, for instance, and just like minimize the effect, depending how much or how little we want to change the effect here. Another very cool thing that we can add here on the post-production. A lot of people hate this. Oh, sorry about that. There we go. A lot of people don't like doing this because it kind of like dirties up the image, but I think it looks cool, especially if we're doing like this sort of like vintage photo. Is adding a little bit of texture. So if we go again into Google and we look for camera dirt, we're gonna get a lot of very, very interesting effects. Like this one right here looks very cool. We can actually use it to simulate some like fireflies. So let's grab like this guy. Like I really like this guy. Let's do copy. Let's paste this, and why not add a couple of like this little particles there. Now this image, as you can see, has a lot of black into it. And what one of the blending modes that gets rid of the black is the screen. So if we hit screen, you're gonna see that we get this very nice effect here. And now of course with our eraser, soft eraser, let's just erase some of the border. So we only get like this effect there, like a magic effect. I'm gonna press Control L to go into the levels again on that specific image. And I wanna push the blacks so that we only get like the little particles there. There we go. And now we can just like rotate this so that the main particles are close to the element. And let's blur them a little bit. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and let's do like a very, very soft blur, just a little bit, so just so that it does not compete with the rest of the elements. So maybe like a 1.5 or something. There we go. And now this guys, for instance, actually I'm gonna keep those. Let's get rid of some of them, especially on the main like light bulb. Because it does look a little bit too much. So let's just a subtle detail there, right? Like something to add a little bit of an extra punch to the image, but it's not completely necessary, right? Something that helps, but again, it's not super important. I am gonna take my vignette and I'm gonna duplicate it and bring it all the way down beneath the what's the word, the images of the fireflies. And I'm just gonna push the background into a darker tone. So I'm gonna push bring my my vignette here forward so that we get this very nice effect. I'm trying to see, and this is very important, like I'm seeing my recording screen over here to see how it looks on video, because my screen, like this screen that I have right here, is not the same as this screen. So I'm gonna get like a little bit of a different result for both of them, and I wanna make sure that everything looks as nice as possible. So if you can, try to download your image to like a phone or like a tablet and see how it looks, because sometimes we calibrate things based on our screen, and when we share it, it looks completely different. So just be careful with that. Now you can see that we have this nice like or like moonlight hitting on our scene. Here's where we can use God rays texture. So if you look for God rays texture, you're gonna find this sort of effects. It's just like again, like a God ray. So it's a nice effect that we can get. And some of them are ready for Photoshop, some of them are not. I'm gonna go for something very, very subtle, like this one looks very cool. So I'm just gonna copy this image, paste right here. Again, on the top, press M to go into the marquee tool, and then Control B. And then this one, we can just make bigger, Control T to go into transform. Right click, and I'm gonna flip horizontal. Keep it something like here, I would say. And again, this is mainly black, so I'm gonna go and make a screen, and you're gonna see that we get this very nice rays. I'm definitely gonna blur this thing, so blur, Gaussian blur. It's gonna be a little bit more of a heavy blur, something like this. And then with my eraser again, I'm very softly gonna erase some of the effects. It's just a little bit of an extra glow here on the top, but not something that it's gonna override the whole thing, right? So that way we get a very nice composition here without sacrificing anything. Let me move my camera here just a second, just so you can see the whole composition, because the what can I do? Let's move it over here just for the time being. It's a little bit of a switch here. So yeah, as you can see, we get this very nice compositional effect where we get the little like fireflies flying towards each other. We have this very nice glows, and that's pretty much it. I think that's all I would add. Again, if you want to add a little bit of texture, and I'm pretty sure this is covered in the Photoshop file, we can go for like old photo texture. Let's look for like an old photo texture. You're gonna see all of this effects. And the cool thing about these things is that we can use this to give the photo, again, a little bit of texture. So for instance, like this parchment right here looks very good. It has a very high quality, which is great for us. Let me see if we can get it for free. Copy image, Control B, or again, M, and all the way in the top, Control B. It's not as high. Just go here. And now this one has a lot of whites, or it's lighter in tone. So what I can do is I can go for a multiply. Multiply is gonna multiply this thing. Now, of course, we're not gonna use the full opacity, so something like a 10% might be good. And you're gonna see that now we get a little bit of texture pretty much everywhere. It's a little bit difficult to see. Let's increase it. It is gonna darken the scene a little bit, but I think it's fine. I think it gives this very old-timey look in general. Now I'm gonna add a little bit more vignette, but this is not gonna be like a full vignette. I wanna like darken a little bit of the areas right here. So I'm gonna add a new layer, go back to B, which is my brush, X to switch the colors, and now we're in black. And then we're just gonna add a little bit of black here, like on the bottom side. And this is just gonna be like normal opacity. Like I don't need to overlay or anything. I'm just gonna normal opacity there, and we're gonna like darken this area. If that's too much, that's fine. We can just erase a little bit of the effect right here. I do feel like this thing is darkening everything quite a bit. So I am gonna keep it, but I'm gonna move it all the way down so that it gets modified by the rest of the elements. And I'm probably gonna decrease this to like 30% or like 20%. There we go. Now I want you guys to take a look at this. I'm gonna grab all of the, I'm gonna grab all of these images right here, all of this, and I'm just gonna hit Control G to group them. And I'm gonna call this post-production. And I want you guys to see, I think I forgot to add this one. I want you guys to see the difference it makes from our original render to this one. So this is our original render. This is what we got from Maya. And this is what we get after giving it a little bit of love here inside of Photoshop. Just a couple of effects, a little bit of color balance. Now, I'm not a post-production artist. There's people that are super specialized in this, and they can make amazing things with the softwares that they have. There's a software called, I believe, DaVinci Resolve, and that one's specifically, or it's one of the specific softwares for like color correction. And there's a lot of things that can be done with this sort of effects. This is just a very basic like creation here. And as you can see, it gives us a nice result. Like everything is looking very, very nice for us. I might want to blur a couple of things. So let me show you how we could blur something else. Even though we did add a little bit of depth of field, if we want to make this even like stronger, I'm gonna duplicate the image of the fireflies here. And I'm just gonna say filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm just gonna blur everything as you can see there. There we go. I'm gonna say right click. Actually, before we do that, I'm gonna duplicate this guy and then right click on the mask, and I'm gonna say apply layer mask. So we're pretty much cutting the object here. And then I'm gonna say filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we get this sort of like effect. And now I can add another mask right here with this button, and we can paint out the areas that we don't want to blur. So we're gonna keep all of these guys in focus, but there's gonna be a little bit of blur everywhere else. It's just a very, very simple effect there. So again, we get this, right? So we're blurring a little bit of the tree here, like the back there. It's not perfect, of course. This is not like true depth of field. It's just a filter here inside of Photoshop, again, to make sure that things look a little bit different. And yeah, that's it. At this point, I would just recommend like adding your name down here. And other than that, just save the image. I strongly recommend you save the image as either a JPEG or a PNG. PNGs are usually really good because they have a lot of resolution. Because JPEGs are gonna what's the word? They're gonna compress a little bit. So it's not bad. JPEGs are not bad. They're really efficient, but you are gonna see that they're a little bit different. So I'm gonna call this Firefly render. Make sure that's maximum quality, and there we go. So now we have a copy, a JPEG copy, and we can still tweak these things if we need to do any more changes later on. So let me bring myself back over here. Let's bring this back so we can see the whole picture, and there you go, guys. It's been a fun project. This one took a little bit longer. You saw that it needed a little bit more modeling, it needed a little bit more texturing, and of course the render, and now the post-production. So this one was a little bit longer. In the next couple of weeks, we're gonna go into shorter videos. I'm gonna be showing you some very nice, cool tips and tricks from different softwares. So we're gonna jump into a little bit of a smaller video approach, and then we're gonna go back into like bigger projects like this guy. So just make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe, share, leave us your comments if you liked all of this series, or if you would like to see anything specifically addressed here in the channel. I'll be happy to look into it and make sure to include it. Other than that, remember that right now we have this special promotion, so check the description of the video because there's going to be a code for a huge discount on the new Photoshop course that just released a couple of days ago. Make sure to check it out, especially if you want to learn all of these tools that I've been using or that I use for this video. And that's it, guys. Thank you very much. I'll see you back on the next one. Bye-bye.